Now, it has become one of the greatest Kenyan reality television moments, beamed live to all households once every 5 years. We're not talking entertainment here, even if, in fact, it is entertaining, but the legal spectacle that presidential election petitions have become. And as Citizen TV's Serfine Achieng reports, the 2022 presidential election petition was the third election petition filed by Raila Odinga since the establishment of the Supreme Court, and was one of the outstanding highlights of the year 2022.
I, Wafula Chebukati, Chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, hereby declares that Ruto William Samoei has been duly elected as the president.
It typically starts with the announcement of presidential election results. On the 15th of August 2022, the chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Wafula Chebukati, declared that the then Deputy President William Ruto, the candidate of the United Democratic Alliance Party, had won the presidential race against his closest challenger, Raila Odinga, of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance flag. The announcement left Odinga's supporters shell-shocked.
That was very surprising. There had been absolutely no indication that there was any possibility that even that UDA could win that election. Every poll, every thing that everybody looked at in terms of the dynamics were very clear that this election had already been won by Raila Odinga.
The announcement and the crossing of the threshold is always done in the absence of any of the candidates, because nobody knows. But in this particular case, this guy stops the open announcement and tally in the morning, and the choir is singing. People are happy for a whole morning. But then he calls Raila Odinga and William Ruto to go to Bomas at 3. And William Ruto turns up. So if the open tallying and display of results had stopped at 5 a.m. in the morning, why was he calling them? What formula was he going to use to arrive at the winner? It can only mean that what Mimi, my niece, says, you've called both of them, we are going to decide who is the winner. The manner in which the winner is supposed to be arrived at, as provided in law, has been stopped. So it can only mean we are going to say, piki, piki, ponki, pakamielo disco. And wherever the disco lands on, voila, you are the president.
Days after that announcement, Odinga's Azimio coalition rejected the results and what they termed as the stealing of their victory.
Ours is victory deferred, but it's coming home. And that's the message to everyone. As we explore avenues, all legal and constitutional avenues, let everybody know victory is coming home.
We've given them a brief as where we are with regard to presidential elections, and they have approved the steps that we have decided to take as a Azimio coalition.
But the most important matter is to stand in solidarity and to stand together.
With presidential election contests ending up in the Supreme Court in the last two elections, the stage was set for yet another legal showdown. And the optics never let down the occasion. A march of solidarity by leaders and their supporters was dressed by a backdrop of truckloads of paperwork that range from the grave evidential materials to trivial procedural courtroom correspondence. The stage was set for yet another of Kenya's grandest legal face-off. It will be Raila Odinga's third presidential petition.
Every document we needed to use or might need to use was of course already on the portal. But you could imagine then being in court and trying to open the IEBC portal and it's not online. So you do not make your case. So one of the things you had to do as a precautionary measure is to ensure that every document we think might come into play or we might make a reference to shall be available in court during the time of the hearing.
A total of 9 petitions were filed, a majority challenging the declaration of William Ruto as president-elect in the August 9th election. 2 petitions were struck out for lacking merit, while the remaining 7 were consolidated into one after the judges pointed out that the petitions raised similar issues and sought corresponding prayers. The petition by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate Martha Karua was then listed as the main petition alongside 6 others.
In the history of our litigation, especially in the presidential election petition, we experienced the greatest number of petitions, a total of 9 petitions. Of course, one was friendly, the one by Moses Kuria, because we did not mind that, going through. But then the other 8 were all, challenging the win of the president. But again, I would be quick to say that there seemed to have been, a very clear scheme to scatter our thoughts and concentrations by just bringing so many petitions which spoke of the same thing.
The Raila petition was both qualitative and quantitative, looking at the arithmetics of arriving at the numbers. Mine was not looking at the numbers, how you arrive at the numbers. I was just looking at whether you adhered to the law when conducting the elections. And civil society groups that I was acting for, these are people who have gone to court even. LF was a petition against Raila Odinga in the BBI petitions. Barely 1 year ago, he was filing cases against Raila Odinga in BBI, and he was against BBI. So to try to say that these were pseudo petitions for Raila Odinga, that is to undermine the right of a Kenyan to seek access to justice.
Well, the good thing is that over the years, Kenya has come to appreciate that elections are also a legal process. Previously, we used to look at elections only in terms of the political processes that go on. But I think ever since the new constitution, and particularly ever since the judgment of the Supreme Court and the Maraga last time, it has become very clear that elections are also a legal and constitutional process.
It emerged that leading presidential candidates prepared for either outcome of the election, with both Ruto and Odinga teams putting elaborate plans for a potential petition at the Supreme Court.
It will surprise you to know that the legal team was actually put in place 2 months before the election. One in anticipation of a scenario where he would be defending his victory, like in this case, or in the worst case scenario where he would be the petitioner in the Supreme Court.
From watching their statements in public, in various statements they were making in their rallies and so on, we could sort of almost imagine what their grounds of petition would be, and based on that we actually prepared. So we were ready for the petition.
As a legal team, we were always on our toes for everything. We had been collecting every document that we needed was in place, and we knew that either we were going to have to defend a petition or that we might have to file one. So it was not a question of getting caught off guard.
My name is Gedhu Muigai, Senior Counsel.
Battalions of lawyers prepared to deploy for duty at the Supreme Court. This is their show.
We of course sat down and started imagining what would be the main ground of any petition that would be filed. And we went through different scenarios and came up with dummy responses even before we saw what they had filed. So when the petitions came, we were not very far from what we had anticipated.
The good thing for Raila Odinga's camp is that it is a running system. It's always running, it's in existence. It's in existence now. In fact, when the result was announced, the very next day we had a lawyers' meeting. Those who are involved know that they are involved. You're not even going to seek out anyone. They're already part of the process.
And so how was it like to comb through the mountain of documents filed in the petition?
We had a team of over 36 lawyers divided into different cadres, the senior counsel, then the litigators, that is ourselves and others. We had also a dedicated team of researchers.
We divided people into various teams, and we asked them to each review the petition and come up with the issues. We then came down to 32 issues, and then we divided people into teams of 32 teams. Each team was looking at one issue each, and they were to prepare the arguments, the law, the response, and so on. So it was a big effort.
I will tell you that for the 2 weeks that it is from the period between when the first petition was filed to the date when the matter was heard, we were working for over 18 hours a day.
One of the 9 issues that the Supreme Court was to determine in the consolidated presidential petition was on whether the IEBC carried out the verification, tallying and declaration of results in accordance with the Constitution. This is especially after several questions were raised over the validity of the presidential results announced by the chairperson Wafula Chebukati, results that were rejected by a majority of IEBC commissioners, among them former Vice Chairperson Juliana Cherera and Commissioners Justus Nyang'aya, Francis Wanderi and Irene Masit.
I was shocked because those commissioners had been in Bomas with us as we tallied the results. They changed turns to be able to assist us and to be able to clarify issues throughout. So they were part of the process. So when I saw that they had broken away and were on a split screen, announcing, disowning the results at Serena, first of all, that is highly irregular.
It was a very tense moment. And I don't think the 4 commissioners really were being patriotic, because that moment would have easily, sparked something that we would all have regretted as a country.
But their action raised the question of the role of the commission versus commissioners as the judges sought to determine the validity of the results announced by Chebukati.
But are we to nullify an election on the basis of a last-minute boardroom rupture, the details of which remain scanty and contradictory between the chairperson of the commission and some of its members?
So we expected this case to revolve and turn on the issue of whether Chebukati, as the returning officer, was justified in making that declaration in the absence of the other 4 commissioners. So for us, that was the main issue.
If 4 commissioners are coming to tell you we did not tally and verify results from 19 constituencies, why are you forcing them to accept that they did it? Because I really wanted to see what the court was going to say about that. Because if they said that it's the responsibility of the chairman, independent of the commission, now I will say then you've lost it. But to justify, they said it is the responsibility of the commission and not the chairman. And then they say in the particular case, despite the 4 commissioners saying they didn't do it, the Supreme Court says they actually did it, that they all verified and tallied the results. So that is an oxymoron.
The other issues in question included whether the technology deployed by the IEBC for the conduct of the 2022 general elections met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security and transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results, whether there was interference with the uploading and transmission of Forms 34A from the polling stations to the IEBC public portal, and whether there was a difference between Form 34A uploaded on the IEBC public portal and Forms 34A received at the National Tallying Centre and Forms 34A issued to the agents at the polling stations.
There were no significant differences captured between the Forms 34A uploaded on the public portal and the physical Forms 34A delivered to Bomas that would have affected the overall outcome of the presidential election.
But was the IEBC server opened for the execution of the scrutiny process?
It has not been granted yet. Only to one server, and it is established that the IBC has got 8 servers.
Next day we raised the same issue. Senior Counsel Philip Morgo again woke up before the court and told the court nothing is going on. We are not being given access to the servers as per your order. Again, the court insisted and said, no, you have been given access. We tried to protest, they insisted that we had been given access. While that was going on, Smartmatics wrote a letter which they copied to court, and they said, we are not going to give you access. Yet when we now came again to the judgment, even the court was saying we have been given access. So those are the things that makes one very doubtful as to whether the court really intended to give us a fair hearing in this matter.
We declare the election of the first respondent as president-elect to be varied under Article 143 of the Constitution.
How did you feel leaving the court that day after the Supreme Court had delivered its verdict and it was not in your favor?
It was sad because I've lived through being a critic of the judiciary. I record a lot of what happens in the judiciary. This was the things that I was hearing. It was very heartbreaking to know how far back we had gone. And I'm not very sure how we shall ever recover from that.
This was Raila Odinga's third petition challenging the outcome of the presidential election results.
At least I've been with him in 2013, 2017. And I wouldn't say that I can judge what's going on in his mind, but this was a bit different because I think the level of injustice on this one was too blatant for everybody. So it was a bit numbing, literally numbing, to see what people were ready to do to deliver results that they had promised.
All right, kindly cue the music.
The verdict by the Supreme Court may have been a second win for President William Ruto, but it did not come without sweat, at least if what lawyer Elias Mutuma, who was part of his legal team, says is anything to go by.
You remember Sinyangatia was also representing the president in 2017 when the elections were nullified, or the results were nullified, and we went back to the ballot. So this case was again placed into his hands. And when we made our presentations, and we made, when the petitioners first did their presentation and we did our rebuttals, we were comfortable with the quality of defense and response we had put forward. But then when we met that evening, Sinyangatia kept on telling us that, guys, I don't believe that it is as good as it looks. It can't just go that smoothly. I mean, I expect these guys to have something up their sleeves. But we asked him, Senior, we've made our presentation. They have closed their case, we have closed our case. I mean, what else is remaining? Just rebuttals, and rebuttals are usually on points of law. We have actually addressed everything. He says, no, I know these guys, and they might pull another card just like they pulled in 2017, and he would call it the Changamwe card, because the presidential election in 2017 was nullified on account of results from Changamwe. So he kept on telling us, guys, we need to be very keen, but I'm not still comfortable. And I remember him telling us that on the eve of the last day of presentations, he could not sleep. He actually woke and went to his office at about 3 a.m. thinking of what is it that has been left out.
And so what was this critical issue that might have been left?
We were in court during the last day, and everyone did their presentation. Then the Soweto moment came, and she was sensational. She was passionate, just relying on one document, and everyone had been looking for this Jose Camargo that they had so passionately presented on, and she went on a live demo.
We were told we forged these documents. Now, this is how, my lords, the staging was happening. This is how the changes were happening. This is on the 9th of August. We were told they were not there. That name, Jose Camargo Gregorio, appears in our petition.
The court proceedings got animated when the name of Jose Camargo, a Venezuelan national, found its way into the hearing.
I wish you were there to see the look on Siniangatia's face. And he looked at her and says, I told you guys, it could not just have gone that smoothly. I knew they had something up their sleeves. Of course, we were all confused at that moment, and we knew we could have easily lost the victory of President Ruto. So we had to quickly regroup and address this specific issue. I remember us walking out together with IBC lawyers, and you remember now they were so tactical in their move, such that they kept this all along. They did not even include it in their main petition. We had done our bit of rebuttals. We did not have any other opportunity to even challenge what they were saying.
My ladies and my lords, this is the same KIMS kit transmitting or sending results, one from Mount Elgon, 1,000 kilometers away from Nyeri town, 2 hours later. How is that possible?
So we regrouped outside, and we were sweating profusely. And, like any other lawyer who has done a presidential election petition, especially when you're defending, is that your client can only lose because they have won. They have been declared the winner. So you're not going to win in court. You can only lose. And we saw us losing at that moment. Luckily, IBC this time around had very good lawyers. People who are familiar with the technology and everything else surrounding, the election practice, and they were able to retrieve that form and give a very convincing answer on why Jose Camargo's name was still being seen at the portal.
The name Jose Camargo on that form is an overlay. Jose Camargo, the register of the QR code, that was printed by Smartmatic International, and it was printed in the name of Jose Camargo.
Lawyer Willis Otieno, however, had a contrary opinion.
Because somebody was saying that the Camargo in the system is like a plumber fixing the pipes in a building. So Mudi said, we've reduced the presidential petition to be about plumbers. I was like, wait a minute. So plumbers are meant to stay permanently on a fixture? No. So I was like, I'm going to tell him, no, plumbers are supposed to leave. But I never thought before that I was going to tie it to a sexual offender. Until when I was speaking, I said the plumber is supposed to fix the piping system and leave. Then I saw Justice Njokindu. And I don't know, it's just a light bulb moment in my head that she is actually the mother of the Sexual Offences Act. I mean, that was a brainchild. She's the one who pushed that enactment. So I saw her in court. And a light bulb moment said that, okay, a plumber in a bathroom is a sexual offender. So I didn't even think about it. It just came to my head.
Even in the midst of that light moment, it became apparent that Julie Soweto had poked the eye of controversy.
We turned to Form 34A for Gacharaigo Primary School, which was sensationally presented by Madam Julie Soweto, advocate, to show that one, Jose Camargo, accessed the RTS and interfered with the result contained therein. This also turned out to be no more than hot air, and we were taken on a wild goose chase that yielded nothing of probative value.
Julie Soweto was my student at the university, one of my best students, actually. And I remember as she went in, I told her, I'm very proud of you as your teacher, that you, at your age, you're appearing before the Supreme Court. It is a great honor. And she went in. When I watched her present fictitious facts and doctored documents to the Supreme Court, it broke my heart.
What surprised me is I don't know why they took on Soweto, and I think it was very personalized, because I raised it first, and then Soweto explained it. But I made my submission before Soweto. I did raise the issue of what we had discovered. Soweto then picked up and followed up on it. She came to make her presentation after me, but for some reason, the court decided to humiliate Soweto. So to that extent, I think there was something very personalized about the way they attacked her.
So as we look at the way forward, in terms of the global best practice, how do you interpret the verdict by the Supreme Court, especially the one for the 2022 presidential election?
I think in terms of any gains that we had made about how to conduct a constitutional, an election that adheres to the Constitution, I think that doesn't exist anymore. I think that's done. And it's very clear that everything Maraga had ever achieved, Kome has wiped out.
I bet if this judgment went the other way, they would not have said that. Because in 2017, they got the same people who lost in this election had their way in 2017, and they did not even, want to benefit from that judgment. So I don't think we can say that the Supreme Court is a threat to our democracy. On the contrary, in any case, is that the Supreme Court somehow brings about finality to an issue that would have, of course, remained hanging if we did not have, the final arbiter who makes, a proper scrutiny of the issues and makes a determination on the issue.
It's not just enough for courts to nullify elections. Courts should start giving sanctions to election officials who mishandle elections. I believe once we do that, people will start taking their role seriously.
Interpretations also vary on the sense of stability in the country post the Supreme Court verdict.
When presentations actually began, every Kenyan, even on social media, will tell you, I don't see the main issue that will have this election nullified. So it is on that account, because people had interacted with the case as it was progressing, to the extent of them forming an opinion of whether this election ought to be nullified or not. So I believe it is because of that transparency and being, participatory in the whole process that people are able to move on very quickly.
Nobody moved on. Very, very many people have not moved on till today. It was numbing, it was shocking. And I think a lot of people were still in shock that actually that can happen. That truth as you see it can end up not being true.
It takes place every 5 years and goes down as the biggest lawyers and judges show in the Kenyan judiciary.
Would you be willing to advise?
As for the future, it might just be turning into a fine mix of serious law with a splash of entertainment.
We've reduced it to Mimi's childhood game of picky, picky, ponky. Picky, ponky. Picky, picky,
ponky. Serfine Achieng, Citizen TV.